Welcome back to How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. Anime Review episode number 10. This I'm viewing the 10th episode of the series, No Place of Joy Hath a Soldier. Now, this episode does adapt more than just one chapter this episode. And that's a bit of a surprise, given the fact that this series previously for this one, I think adapted brief one chapter a couple episodes back. But a lot of the time last time they probably did this was back in episode 1, where they adapted the prelude and most of chapter 1. This one adapted 2 full chapters and almost half of chapter 6. The 2 chapters they adapted fully were chapter 4 and 5. And with the exception of minor bits of dialogue, they kept everything in. And you probably think, that's a surprise. But in case this series, not really per se, even though they did cut a lot out from chapters 2 and 3, they only adapt two chapters halfway through. In the case of this episode, basically about 2.5 chapters. Which, wow. Now, there are several different locations here. Now, does Salter show up in this episode? Yes, he doesn't show up at the very end. I'll get to that. Lucia, this actually is the first episode she's actually missed. There's actually a mention of her toward the end of the episode, but appearance-wise, no, she does not make an appearance at all. Juno does not make an appearance in the series, which is kind of surprising. Asya, as far as I can tell, this is also the first time since the pilot episode she's not physically appeared. Tomi herself, she has not appeared. This is probably her first time since the since the pilot episode. A lot of characters were absent in this episode. Just you see Hiroshima. I think he's the guy's name. He's the prime minister. You see him briefly at the start of the episode. Actually, something briefly appears here basically at the start of the episode and the last little bit of the episode because focusing on other people in the episode. So, episode starts off with Sultan being informed that the Principality of Armenia has crossed the border and nearing toward a particular town. And they arrive at the town. This is a contingent of about 30,000 troops. They actually arrive at the town, and we see this older guy. His name is Weiss, West something. So, he basically is being, bowing to him. Now, in the book, he refers to as Princely Highness. In the anime, it's simply Your Highness. And my rant still stands. He's the ruler of a country. His son is the prince. Why the heck is he still referred to as a prince in the book? In the anime, he is referred to as a king. Because he's the leader of a freaking country, so why the heck is he still referred to as a prince? It makes no freaking sense at all. I mean, with the exception of cutting out that tiny portion, it's mostly the same as in the book. Pretty much. So it says, oh yeah, he opened the game, let me talk to basically the city kind of split in half. So he rushed back inside. Comes back out the next day, requests an audience. And it's can you wait a little bit longer to the very next day, like 12 o'clock? Here, you can have all this gold. And he raced back inside, and turns out this delay was actually caused by, we see this older woman who clearly is hot, despite the fact that this woman is 500 years old. The episode mentioned it, but she is. It's Duchess XL Water. She's the one basically having this big plan. Apparently Soma basically is planning something really big. Which is going to be something, though. And this is just a delay tactic. And that's all you see. And, of course, you have Prince Gladius basically planning a full-scale attack. But we cut away from that, and that's the last we see of that for the whole episode. We next cut to a battle. Yes, a battle going on in this mysterious fortress. Which, yes, this actually from chapter 5. The whole beginning portion of the episode, that's all from chapter 4. Yes, the first chunk of this episode is all from chapter 4. And, like I said, with the exception of some minor bits of dialogue, it's mostly the same. Which is quite surprising given the fact that the chapter is pretty lengthy. And somehow they managed to basically squeeze that into about 10 minutes. Because second half of the episode, there's also a little bit toward the very end, basically, that has like the night before thing. So we cut to a castle. I think his name of the castle is a fortress built by Kaede using her magic. Though they actually do cut out the bit of mentioning that it was Tomi who brought a group of giant rhinoceros who have built this damn thing. In the anime, they said Kaede basically used her magic. I'm not really sure why they cut that out for. That would have been awesome to hear that comment. Like, apparently a group of giant rhinoceros built this damn fortress. I'm like, okay, it looks like a traditional fortress, like a fortress you see from the time of medieval, from the Dark Ages. And the whole thing is lined with Roman concrete, which that actually is a real thing. That, as far as I can tell, we still kind of use that today, from what I can tell. And basically, we have the army, the Duke Carmine's army, where basically he's firing the fortress, and then all of a sudden he brings us some freaking cannons. Yes, cannons. And yes, they did this in the book too. And they fired on the damn thing, and then, of course, like, during the course of the battle, we have it where, like, this dark elf pops up out of nowhere, which kind of in the book he kind of did too. His name is Sur. He's actually the father of a little girl that Hal saved just, like, 2 episodes back. Yes, they cut a little bit out from the disaster stuff from 2 episodes back. I'm not really sure why they cut this out. It's kind of a bit odd. They cut out a very important scene. They kept a lot of it in, except that this episode, like kept a towel out. Here they cut like a small chunk of basically that scene for like no reason. So he mentions, oh yeah, of course his dialogue with Hal was the spy from the book. Like she wants to be like him, wants to join the Forbidden Army. And apparently that annoyed him. So he basically decided to show up. And then we have Ludwig. They actually mentioned my name in the episode, but it's Ludwig. Where basically he orders the drawbridge. Yes, this thing has a fucking drawbridge. Which they cut the bit basically out of him being ordered to do this. So they lower it down and they had them destroy the freaking cannons. And we cut to Duke Carmine. Where he basically is chastising the nobles who are supporting him. And these nobles, basically, all they care about is their money. Duke Carmine cares. He's basically a prideful warrior, and he doesn't like these guys at all. Oh, here's something for you. His subordinate's name is Beowulf. Yep, as in the old Norse legend. And he's an actual wolfman, which I think is quite interesting. This is a plain role episode? Not really, no. He's just there basically just for a good cameo. So he basically says, oh yeah, we'll basically take a day off. And then that scene ends with basically the waivers showing up. And then we cut to the night before. This comes from chapter 6, where we have Duke Chester, the one who's in charge, Duke Castor, where who's in charge of the Air Force, where he basically is informed that, well, stuff's going pretty well. And then all of a sudden, Carla comes in, one of his kids. I believe this actually is his only daughter, if I'm not mistaken, where she's informed that Sotoma basically is coming to the Red Dragon City. They also mentioned that all the citizens have been evacuated. The only people who are actually in the city itself are the actual House of Voros and like the Air Force. That's it. He's like, good. Because he basically all the 2 dukes who agreed to go to war with Sotoma, this is what they agreed last episode, that no innocent civilian would be harmed in this particular fight. That they be kept out of the fighting. Which, of course, the two dukes who basically are opposing King Sotoma actually agreed with that. That the citizenry, the ones who are not military, they're kept completely out, which is great. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, Sotoma's coming, and he's coming, his force is coming. It's like, how much? How much is coming? A ship. And I'm thinking, a ship? How? And they look outside. Now they don't bring up the episode, but in the book they do. This ship, which is basically the Battleship Albert, which they don't mention in the actual episode itself, that it's actually styled at the real life Mikasa battleship, which I think still exists, if I'm not mistaken. It's a real battleship. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen pictures of the thing. Which actually, this is the first series to mention the actual battleship, because the character Mikasa from Attack on Titan is named after this battleship, because there's a recurring thing with Japan that if you name a character after a battleship, that the series do really well. That kind of explains the whole thing, why Attack on Titan had become so popular in the last decade. Oh, and here's the thing. The ship itself, the Battleship Albert, is being dragged along the land by 4 giant rhinoceros, which is so awesome. This is an awesome sight to see. Now, once again, they don't bring it the fact these are rhinoceros. Yep. So then they mention, that Sultan wants basically a letter to basically talk to Joe Broadcast. Now, this I actually think is the fault of the anime, where the animation was a bit ahead on the dialogue. Yes, because, there's Sultan basically on the Joe Broadcasting, and then they receive, we receive a letter from the king, he wants to speak with you. Did the people who animate this episode, apparently just not keep up with basically what the actual dialogue is saying? Because this actually is a goof on the part of... I don't know if this is a goof on the part of the animators of this episode, or if it's a goof on the people who wrote the script. Where, I don't know if this is done on purpose, where the visual is done ahead of time before the letter comes in, which I think is actually quite dumb. If you can basically say, receive a letter, show the damn thing, and then basically show something on the actual Joe broadcast. And then just, look, here he is. King Sultan basically is on the Joe broadcast system already before he received the damn letter. And he basically wearing a military uniform, which is the first time he's actually worn outside of a brief image. He says, "Hi, Caster. Would you like to surrender?" And this is kind of it's not exactly what they said in the episode. Yeah. So, "Hey, Caster, you want to surrender?" He's like, "Nope, I am not going to surrender." And Sultan was like, "Okay, fire in the city." And they do. They fire in the damn city. Yeah, that may not be the dialogue what they said, but that's paraphrasing exactly what they're saying. And of course, he actually is agreeing with the king. You think are you going to turn against Carmine? He's like, no, not really. So they fire in the city, and then of course Carla is ordered by her own father to leave a team of waivers, which in the episode they cut a bit of hesitation on her part. They attack against him, and they cut tiny bits of dialogue here, very tiny lines that, as far as I can tell, despite the fact it would basically expand upon the scene, maybe expand upon these couple more minutes. But they probably had to cut a little bit of dialogue from this particular moment of the episode, probably for time constraints, because there is several lines in the episode, not basically story-driven lines per se, but basically some dialogue just exchanged here, just to basically speed up the action a bit. Where the battleship fires on them, and then of course they actually fire back, and of course Carla mentions basically that they don't want to kill Sultan because that'll make Lucia very unhappy because they're best friends. Because she thinks that. And it's capture the king alive because the princess will be upset basically over because I think even she knows that Lucia is in love with Sultana. And they storm the ship after basically doing some damage to it. And they look inside and there's nobody there. All that's here is a group of mannequins. Yes, mannequins. My guess is Sultan wants to command was Perkin Poltergeist, which they don't mention in the episode, but it's implied he did. And then we hear an explosion at the castle, and that's where the episode ends. Yep, because that's where we figure, though, that's what could end up anyways. That's basically how it is. Now, kind of interesting ended there. I would have thought, though, they might continue this little moment. Probably need a shocking cliffhanger at the end of the episode, but it's not really big an issue with me at the end of there. Just it just ended right there. Okay, Continue next week. Okay? But this definitely was a damn good episode. They did a really good job with the dialogue. I think that the only goof, like I said, was the dual broadcasting thing. Yeah, that's actually the first time that the series is a goof. Yeah, an actual goof, which that is something. I mean, JC Staff has done series based upon light novels before. My guess is maybe the people who work in this episode maybe were not that experienced, or maybe they were kind of rushing ahead given the fact that they may have read the book. It's possible. But yeah, that's it for this particular review. Stay tuned for my next review, which is going to be a Comic Corner, and then of course it's going to be the case of the Atlantis, which I'm hoping to do that tonight, and another Comic Corner, and that'll probably be it for today because I'm running out of time. Okay, next video. Bye.